Hello? Okay, so I am guessing I'm online now. How can I tell if other people are here? Let's see. All right, I am just going to pretend that people know what's going on. Let's see. Science. Let's do that. Let's see. Okay, so there are viewers here. 2 viewers. Can anybody hear me? Well, actually, maybe if I just look at the event, I can find out. Okay, let me try to test the PowerPoint. Let's see. How do I do that? Screen share. Screen share. Perfect. All right. Okay, so okay, so great. This is good. This works. So there's one more thing I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to. Hi guys. I don't know how many of you guys are here, but welcome. Thanks for being here. I hope it's okay that I speak English, because if thankfully I was going to speak Mandarin, I'm Cantonese speaking and my Mandarin is very poor. So I hope it's okay that I speak English to everybody, and that works. Okay, I will wait for a little longer. I think the thing I'm gonna do is to try to get that chat on my phone so I can see you guys while I present. Let me see, how might I do that? I think what I'll probably try to do is to navigate to it on my phone. Let's see if that works. Nope. Subscriptions. This is I'm gonna. Sorry for. Is there any way that I can hear people who are on the stream or not? I'm assuming you guys have done this before, and you guys can tell me. I'm watching for any feedback on the chat. Oh, it's one way. Okay, that's too bad. That's all right. I am sure we will figure it out. It just seems a little strange because like it's hard for me to tell whether I am getting across or not. So if I can ask a favor of everybody to like as you guys go along, if there's any questions or any feedback, please don't hesitate to type in the live stream chat. I will be watching the chat, and I will try to make sure that I'm responding. The slides are not clear enough. Great. I will project the slides soon. As soon as I figure out how to get that chat onto my phone. Yeah, so give me just a couple seconds. Let's see. Yeah, so give me just. Okay, so live chat is here. Great, perfect. I got it all set up. This is really good. I'm very excited. Okay, so should I start? Can everybody kind of see the screen? It's already doing the animated slides. Okay, great. So Fang, with your permission, I'm going to start. Is that okay? Great, perfect. Okay, so welcome. Thank you for being here. Fang has asked me to talk a little bit about storytelling in data science. And he and I met at a H2O event in New York, where I gave a presentation very much like this one, talking about how to tell a story with data and how to tell a story with machine learning. And so what you're looking at on the screen right now, unfortunately not very clearly, so I'm going to actually show you the actual website, is a project that I did last year called R2D3. And I am going to pull it up. How many of you guys have seen this project? So this project is a visualization of machine learning. And actually, let me switch to the Chinese version because I wrote the Chinese version. And so this is using visualization to explain machine learning to a layperson. And the whole point is to take something step by step using visualization to say, hey, here is one concept, here's a next concept. Oh, I'm talking about elevation here. And then the next thing is like I'm showing another dimension in the data, which is price per square foot. And as I keep going, I'm showing more data points in the data set. And I start to explain to people that, hey, if you take this pattern, you can actually find some interesting things to say about it, and it will help you predict whether a house is in San Francisco or in New York. And so I'm doing a lot of animations here. I'm using transitions to show how does the data change and how does that data turn into something that you can analyze. And so here I'm explaining a decision tree, right? And I show a dimension using some histograms. And I'm able to say, hey, as your histogram is split up, you can actually make a decision based on the distribution of that data. And as I move forward, I am scrolling, I'm telling a story. As you can see, like these little sections kind of come up on the right. And as each section comes through, I'm adding on a new idea, right? And so I'm not going to belabor the point. This whole thing is really just showing one idea at a time. How does a decision tree work? And as I scroll further, I'm showing, oh, hey, here's a decision tree. It splits and it kind of learns the decision or learns the pattern in the data through this pattern. And I'm using animations to do that. And finally, some of you guys may have seen this graphic before. This is this animation that is showing how a decision tree makes classifications. And of course, like at the end, I show, hey, actually, in reality, it doesn't actually work so well. And then I beginning to show the idea of like, oh, hey, this tree is overfitted, right? And so through a few animations and a few kind of slides and a couple words, I'm introducing the idea of machine learning to a large audience. And so this is the project that kind of shows how you can tell a story with visuals, how you can tell a story about data science by breaking things down. So yeah, so that's kind of the project. And let me kind of jump into the philosophy behind the project, and that's actually the most of the presentation. So let me switch back to Keynote and play that out. I haven't seen any response in the chat. Are people following along okay? I am not seeing any responses. This makes me nervous. All right, I'm gonna forge ahead, but if any of you guys have are hearing me at least, just like give me a thumbs up or something, and I can feel like, oh, I'm not just talking to the void. Okay, so let's back up. So I'm a designer. I'm doing all of this visualization. What is the point? Why do we care about visualization? Why do we even care about storytelling, right? Why does a data scientist or somebody who is quantitative care about any of this stuff? Why do you care what a designer has to say? So this is why. So machine learning, data science often feels like a black box that has a little piece of receipt coming out. It's just like, oh, here's your answer. Here is the magical answer that's coming out of the box. But often people don't understand what is going on. People like look at it and it feels like this is a mystery. And if I just gave you a mystery box that says, hey, this box will answer your question, why should you trust me? There's no reason for you to trust me. And so if you're a data scientist, in order for your work to be valued, in order for your work to be applied in real businesses, you have to be able to explain your ideas to other people, right? And the way I think about it as a designer is that I understand machine learning, I understand the analysis that I built. I have to reconstruct that idea that is in my head inside of your head, right? And that's what this graphic is like, how do I take pieces of that machine learning model or pieces of the idea, whatever idea it is that I'm trying to convey, and reconstruct it in your head. So I'm going to talk about a couple principles about how to do that. And it comes from kind of a designer's point of view in talking about ideas and teaching ideas. And so, so the first principle I want to talk about, there's two of them. Actually, two principles is attention. It's like, are you holding people's attention? Are they paying attention? And pacing. How do you order things such that things feel like they are in good order and you're not overwhelming people, right? So let's start with attention. Attention is the mental faculty of considering or taking notice of something, right? Right now, you guys are all over the world, apparently, looking at your screen, and there's that huge kind of handwritten letter that is on your screen right now that I drew. And that's holding your attention right now. Hopefully my voice is holding your attention right now. And when you are telling a story, you have to think about, hey, are you doing something that's helping hold the attention of the person, or are they going to drift off? And the way to think about it is just like, at least on my kind of work on the web, there's two kinds of attention that you care about. There's visual attention, right? And that's why I pay so much attention to the graphics, to animation, because that is the kind of work that is going to be able to help you grab somebody's eye, right? If something is beautiful, or something is moving, or something has the right layout, it helps keep people's attention. And also then memory. Memory is a short-term attention span. It's just like, hey, like how much can you remember? If I give you 50 things at once, you're not going to remember all of it, and you're going to lose people's attention. So you have to remember that our minds can only handle like maybe like 5 to 7 things at once, at most. And you have to be careful about how you use that mental attention. The way I think about it often is this metaphor of a sink. It's like your attention is constantly draining away, right? You're distracted, like my cell phone just rang, and then like that's taking my attention away. And you have to find a way in your story to fill that attention back up. And so like, because if you don't fill up that attention, people are going to drift off. Some of you guys may have drifted off it already, right? It's just like, oh, this is boring, I'm going to go away. That means that like my attention, like I'm not keeping your attention, and your attention is gone, right? So let's take a look at what actually manages attention. So there's two categories that I think about. Things that gain attention and things that drain attention, right? Things that gain attention are things like surprise, right? When my phone just rang, it's just like, oh, you didn't expect that, right? That's surprise, and it got your attention. But that's not a great way to get attention. Delight is a better way of getting attention. Something beautiful, something moving, something that is graphic, like that's delightful. Order gains attention. Something that helps you look at something and say like, hey, I can make sense of this, and coherence is related. Those things are like help you like preserve your attention. It's just like, oh, I understand this. This helps me. Things that drain attention is like time, right? I've been talking for like 15 minutes now. Some of your attention is draining away. You might be tired. It's a long day, right? That's draining your attention. Decisions, right? Like if you have to make a decision about something. I have to decide A or B. That takes attention. That drains attention. Clutter and confusion. It's just like if there is things all over the page, right? That drains your attention. So from a designer's perspective, the way I think about explaining an idea through graphics is I'm trying to use space to control time. And you can actually look at this slide and see some of that. If you're just looking at this slide now, you would see the word space and time, and it pops out at you first because they're so big. I'm using graphic design to get you to pay attention to some things first and something next. Another example is like this. I didn't have to tell you to look. You just looked because it's the first thing that you see on the top left. And then you would keep going down. So this design leverages convention. The convention teaches you to look at things first and like how to direct people's attention. And so these are kind of principles in graphic design that really helps you see like, oh, I'm going to direct people's attention this way. Another thing to notice here is that I almost have nothing on this page. I have like 4 or 5 things, right? And that focuses people's attention as well. So let's take it more practically. Like you guys just saw this project, a visual introduction to machine learning. What is the first thing that you see? You see the big title, right? You see you see some of the text, and then you see this weird scatter plot over on the right, and you don't know what it is yet. And this is done very intentionally because this layout shows you, okay, you should read the title first, read some of the text, and then it gives you something to feel like, oh, that might be interesting on the right side. I wonder what it is. And to make it more explicit, this is very much how I structure a presentation, right? I'm going to show you something interesting. Like I showed you the website first, and then I'm going to tell you, hey, why should you care? This page right now is a visual introduction to machine learning. Oh, maybe you learned something about machine learning. That's cool. And for this presentation, I talked about, oh, here's how you think about storytelling. And lastly, of course, I asked you to do something. On the web, you have to, right? So there's a call to action. I ask you to scroll. And if you don't believe me, here is the same technique used by the New York Times. There is a headline, there is the value proposition, there's the intrigue, and there's a call to action. Same sort of thing. I'm repeating the same thing. This is a technique for directing people's attention. I'm going to pause here and just to see if people are still following along. Let's see. How's everybody doing? Let's see. Looks like people are doing okay. So I talked about 2 principles. Great, I saw a smiley face, thank you. All right, so going back to the first idea, why do we care? We care because we are trying to reconstruct an idea in your head, you're the analyst, in somebody else's head. A second thing to think about in addition to like just trying to keep people's attention is pace, right? Pacing is the idea of doing something at a slow and steady rate in order to avoid overexertion. And we are trying to avoid overexerting people's attention span, right? And so let me give you an example. So what if I told you, or I asked, this is a Lego building. This is the Flatiron building in New York, actually. And I told you, hey, please rebuild this with this. You look at it and it's just like, this is just a pile of stuff. You feel overwhelmed. Where do you even start, right? And so what is happening here is just your attention is overwhelmed, right? There's too many things going on. There's too many possibilities. There's no starting point. And immediately you've lost somebody's attention, right? And so like your attention is kind of like that funnel here. You can only get so many pieces through at a time. And if you put too many things into it, you get stuck. And so what's the secret? The secret is to break it down, right? You have to kind of like take ideas that are too big, too complex, too dense, and then like break it down, figure out what's the right piece at the right time. And so of course, like I took the example of Lego for a reason, because every Lego every Lego toy set comes with an instruction manual that looks like this. It shows you the end result, and then it says, hey, find this piece, start with this. And then it says like, next, find this piece, put them together. Next, find another set of pieces, put it together. And the whole idea here is that now is pacing you through things one at a time, right? And implicit in the Lego instruction manual is this kind of dependency tree that allows you to say like, hey, these pieces are related, put these pieces together in this order, and eventually you get the result of like the whole thing. You can totally build that building, just not start with that whole pile of things. You need to start with pieces one at a time. So how do you know whether something is broken down enough, right? If you're doing a report or you're doing a slide deck, generally my rule of thumb is if it's something that you look at it and you want to scan it instead of reading it, that's too much, right? And so on the right side, you look at it and you're just like, oh, I maybe look at a couple of sentences, but I'm not going to look at the whole thing. On the left side, you feel like, oh, it's broken down enough. I'm going to read every single piece. That's what you're going for. That's how much you want to break it down. And you might ask, wait, but how do I know what is the right place to break things down? The way to think about how to break things down is this idea of understanding that ideas depends on other ideas. So I don't know how many of you guys are software developers, but there's this idea in software that is just like, hey, like, or like even when you're doing analysis in R or Python, you have to go include packages, right? And those are dependencies. And those dependencies often depend on other things. And so you want to think about the idea that you're communicating as being composed of smaller ideas. And so if you find how those ideas are composed, you can start to break them down, right? And so remember, like at the beginning, the example that I gave was, hey, how do I explain machine learning? There's a dependency tree of like ideas that together make up the idea of machine learning. So I'm going to show that here. This is how kind of I wrote it. A decision tree is an example of machine learning. How do I get there? Well, let's start with this idea of like data have patterns, right? That's not really controversial. You can see that, hey, this data has like a distribution, and that distribution helps you see things. And those patterns may correlate with a desired outcome. That's the next step, right? And if I combine those two ideas, I can say, use patterns to create a decision rule, right? And so like you're constructing that idea and like combining them. Let's add another idea. Statistics can precisely capture a pattern. Now I'm saying something new. And now I'm like, oh, okay, this is how it links together. And so we're going to use statistics to compute the best decision rule, right? And like, once again, that's like combining the two previous ideas. And then I'm going to combine that idea with two other ideas, which is subdivision and recursion. So the decision tree is like, I'm going to keep dividing the data, and I'm going to do it over and over again. And now I can get to this idea of a decision rule can be chained together to improve accuracy, right? And I added to the tree metaphor. And finally, you have a decision tree that is an example of machine learning. That's how you can get to a complex idea at the end from a bunch of ideas in the beginning. You have to think about how they combine. You have to reconstruct that idea. And so the other thing to think about is that order matters, right? It's really important to introduce ideas one at a time and in the right order. Because if you don't introduce them in the right order, how are people supposed to piece them together? And so you have to think carefully about which ideas you introduce first, which ideas you introduce next, until they all kind of come together. And of course, that depends on like who you're talking to. Talking to your parents, you have to maybe like start with like really elementary ideas. You're talking to your colleagues and your classmates, they already have a baseline understanding of what you have to say, then you can start higher level. And so this kind of ordering and this kind of construction isn't just about ideas. You will notice that even in my visuals, in the design of my work, I'm doing the same thing, right? So I started with that elevation chart. The next thing is I turned it on its side, right? It's just one transformation. And then I pushed them to, I kind of aggregated them together into a histogram, right? And the visualization shows you how that's done. And I say, hey, like actually in this histogram, you can make a split, right? So one more transformation. And then it's like, oh, now I use that visual and I say, I'm going to produce more of them. And only finally do I say, hey, actually, let's abstract it a little bit, and it turns into a tree, right? So both in terms of the words that I'm using and also the pictures that I'm using, I am building up to a larger idea one at a time. And yeah, I mean, yes, this video, I'm assuming this video will be saved somewhere, so you can certainly review it later. Yeah, so here, one idea at a time, right? Like you have to get your idea through that very narrow channel in the middle. And you have to think very carefully about how do you chain things together to do that. So yeah, so that's it. To explain an idea well, we have to do two things, right? We have to pay attention to how other people use attention. Like don't overwhelm them, keep their attention, great graphics, few words, and then make sure that it's slow and steady, right? Pacing is about like getting things through one at a time. that's all I have. Let me see if there's a couple other things I can show you to help set things up. If there's anything. Actually, why don't we start with questions first? Do you guys have questions for me? Did everything make sense? Preferred visualization tools. Yeah, so I generally use D3. They provide lots of tools for, like, this is how I started learning to do visualizations. They have really great documentation. So I generally use this for a lot of my work. And then for some of the more advanced visualizations, I often use React. This is a library from Facebook to do the like low-level animation work. Other questions? Okay, while I'm waiting for questions, I'm going to post these links on the chat so people have it. Okay, so let's start with the question about large data sets. The principle to show viz if showing the whole set is not feasible. A lot of it has to do with aggregation, right? And so let me show you, right? So like this kind of work that I'm showing right now, the histogram and the pie charts, right? They scale to much larger data sets. Basically, like you have to prepare the data in advance, but it helps you kind of like look at the data set and see the trends in it. The histogram especially is really helpful for seeing the shape of the data. And then like there's a lot of things in statistics really that's really about like getting the nuances of the data, like finding like outliers and things like that. You can do all those things in advance. From a design standpoint, there isn't actually really like a universal principle. Yeah, I hope that was kind of helpful. The large data set question is actually a pretty hard one to answer, just because like different data sets have different summarization techniques. And I can't really speak to a particular data set without knowing what the data set is. Next, I'm going to answer Richard's question. How do you use D3 to directly connect with analytics? Generally, I don't do that directly. A lot of my work has been around like explanation and illustration. So the work that I'm doing at H2O actually has more to do with that. But oftentimes, like the data set comes to me already kind of prepared. So unfortunately, I can't really give you a good answer to that question. In terms of at least like if you're doing smaller data sets, D3 has good, what's that called? Has good functionality for dealing with that. So a lot of like D3's kind of delimited separated values, like these are really great tools for parsing data, like the CSV and TSV formats. And then there are some other JavaScript libraries that are good for handling some of this data set. Underscore, at least in my mind, that's it pretty well. You can do a lot of really interesting MapReduce things with it that can summarize data for you. And then, yeah, so like these are kind of tools. I can put together an email just like with some resources that I can point to and send it to the organizers, and this organizers can maybe send it out. Does it sound reasonable? I'm going to assume it is because it's it seems like the stream is a little bit delayed and it's hard for me to get answers from you guys. Some examples to show you guys more detail. It depends on what the details are about, like what kind of detail are you hoping to get? Like what kind of examples? I can certainly show you a few things that some of my colleagues have done or examples that I really like. And actually, let me show you the this project that I thought was really cool. There you go. So this is a project that one of my friends did that is actually demo. There we go. So yeah, this is a project that like it's kind of, I guess it's like an example of showing like how do you deal with like a really big data set, right? There's much more data here, and you can start to use these different tools. And this is much more of using data visualization not to tell a story, but to kind of do analysis, right? And so you can suddenly kind of see like, hey, different teams, right? This is a data set about the NBA, and you can like sort things and see like, oh, okay, like, hey, who is the John Wall is the leading scorer for the Washington Wizards, right? So there's some tools out there for like thinking about how to visualize things, and you can start to see some patterns here that are pretty interesting. You can start to see like, hey, with visualization, it's very easy for you to see that points is pretty correlated with minutes, right? Just by seeing the shape of those histograms. I don't know if this is the kind of example that you were looking for, but I always looked at this and thought this was pretty interesting. Yeah, other questions? And yes, putting the slides on Drive so you guys can look at it later. I can certainly do that. My slide deck was in Keynote, but I can send a copy of that out. And I actually did so I will send that out, and hopefully that will be something that you guys can look at. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, this is not the right. I will send it out. Yeah, and yeah, so my website has a few more examples. Some of my work is less data-vid specific. So for example, like I have this project, which is about American democracy. So like this is much more very strictly storytelling. So I had wanted to talk about how much money there is in American politics and about elections. And so like I'm doing something like, hey, there were 435 House elections in the 2012 cycle. The candidates that outspent their opponents won 95% of them. So those are all the orange circles. So you can hover around and see like, hey, who won and who lost, right? And the idea is just like, hey, money seems highly correlated with winning an election. Is that something that we're okay with, right? And I start to tell a story. A tiny group of powerful funders give our politicians the money they need to win elections. And then it's like less than 1% of Americans contribute 68% of all election funding, right? And then like this money is basically like overwhelming Congress, right? And so then I start to show a couple examples, right? So once again, this is the idea of one idea at a time. So should there be stricter gun laws regulating gun ownership? Well, there's a lot of money on one side. Guess which one is winning, right? Same thing. Should there be stricter guidelines for food marketed to children in schools? Same idea. Hey, there's a big imbalance in terms of money. And then the Keystone Pipeline. This actually was vetoed, so I was impressed that the opposition won despite much less money. And then there's a cybersecurity bill where like the contrast is just huge. There's so little money on one side and so much on the other. So it's like, once again, it's like one idea at a time, one story talking point at a time. And then I have a call to action. Hey, this is real change can happen, is rigged, but we can fix it, right? And so like this is very much like, this is just graphic design now. It's not really data viz, but that's okay. Like if you need to get an idea across, this is how you do it. Like really beautiful visuals. I am like having very few words, but like very kind of, hopefully very impactful words to convey an idea, right? And finally, we say like, okay, what am I asking people to do? They should give money. They should help pass this bill or pass this law, and then ask people to like sign the petition. So yeah, so this is an example of more strictly storytelling, not just in data science. Hopefully that was helpful. Other questions? And I guess a quick check on time. How much time do I have? Oh, I still have 20 minutes? Okay, I don't have 20 minutes worth of material for you guys. So if you guys have other questions or you guys want me to like show more other work, I can certainly do that. And I'm happy to answer more questions, but I didn't know that was supposed to be an hour. Sorry about that. Okay, let me see. What else would I talk about? I guess I can show you guys a few more examples of things that I thought were like really, really good. I need to look them up though. Let's see. Let's see. So in the same style of like using data viz to tell stories, there's another example that I thought was really good. This is one, this one seems kind of odd. All right, well, it works. So this is an article from someone, actually my friends who do data viz at Bloomberg, talking about anger among the American electorate, so people who are voters, right? And so big bold letters, big red colors, just like try to get your attention. Hey, and then it's like, all right, well, what is the idea? The world's middle classes are getting poorer, right? The share of wealth owned by the middle class declined in every part of the world on a relative basis, right? There's no animation here. It's not really fancy. Let's see. Oh, text data. Let me walk through the Bloomberg one, and then maybe I can show you guys a different project that does word cloud or sentiment analysis. I actually think I know a good one. But yeah, let me just quickly go through this. So once again, big headlines, a few sentences, really just kind of like get people to look at the story. And it's very quick. It's just like, oh, here's another idea, right? A small idea here. Share of income has dropped to the near lowest level since World War II. In the past, the rich has markedly gotten richer. It's just a sentence, a graphic, a sentence, a graphic, right? In European sudden crisis, country have fallen. You can see the lines, just very simple, very like, you can just look at it and get a sense of like what's going on. And I think this kind of storytelling, as opposed to a lot of like probably decks that you guys have seen, especially in academia, it's just like, hey, here's all the things at once. No, there's just one sentence, a couple graphics, and it really helps you kind of like get through the material, right? And it's in the big headline, things are even worse for young people, right? Debt is soaring, right? It's very easy to read these graphs, and it's very easy to just look at it and say, okay, I get it, I get it. Or people are worse off versus better off, right? Immigration, right? Once again, it's very easy to see, oh, here's a trend, and that trend is growing. Here's another trend, that trend is around immigration is growing. The point is not necessarily the individual graphics here. It's about like, how do we pace telling that story so that by the end of it, you're just like, oh, I get it. I remember not the specific graphics, but the point that the designer or the storyteller is trying to get across. All this is causing politics to fragment. So like all the big ideas and this big red headings and then subheadings, right? And so yeah, so this is, to me, is a really great example of telling a story in simple graphics that help you kind of get through a complex idea with just a few words and a few graphics at a time. And none of it is really complicated. There's no super fancy data graphics here. It's just line charts after line chart, bar chart after bar chart, but it gets the idea across. Okay, I'm gonna paste this link in the chat, and then I'll show you the text analysis one that I saw that I thought was really good, and then I'll probably call it a day. So the talk that you guys just heard from me is actually a modified version of the talk from the OpenVis conference, which is a conference that happened in April that I spoke at. And I thought they did a really good job. So these guys, basically what they did was like they took the video and they said, okay, instead of the transcript, I'm going to take the transcript and say like, hey, where are certain words mentioned, right? So like this talk by Martin and Fernanda talked a lot about, was basically a talk about visualizing TensorFlow, right? And they mentioned the word neuronet a lot, neuronet a lot, and network a lot, and TensorFlow, and Node. And like, it really gives people a way to say like, hey, I'm interested in these words. I just want to go look at where that word was said, right? And so like you can see, oh, those images, right? Tensor shape is like these two slides. And so like, it's a neat way of showing people, hey, like, here's a transcript. Here is what was said during the talk. And I think if I click on it, you actually can see the, you can actually see that part of the video. So it's kind of like a really nice way of showing like the transcript of a piece of text and like the flow of a piece of text. So I thought that was pretty neat, and it really helps kind of people see that like these are topics that are relevant. And you can see mine actually. So my talk has like a lot of, as you guys saw, is like talking about attention gain and draining attention, saving attention, directing attention. Talk a lot about short-term memory. I talk a little bit about like cognitive psychology, right? So once again, we're using kind of color here and like the height here to talk a little bit about like the distribution of words in that data set. Was that helpful? I'm going to paste that link here while I wait for you guys to respond. Great, of course. So that's more material than I had prepared. I hope you guys found it really helpful. Let's see. So I can let me share my email with you guys, so you guys can look me up and send me questions, and feel free to reach out. Happy to chat. If any of you guys are in the Bay Area in San Francisco, I'm happy to grab coffee and talk more about visualization and talk more about data science. Yeah, so that's all I have. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys enjoyed our little chat. Okay, so good luck, and I will hopefully hear from you guys soon. Take care.